I'm going to go ahead and open the meeting.
Carrie's right behind me in the parking lot.
Okay, so welcome everyone to the Capital Planning Subcommittee. Go around and introduce ourselves. I am Sarah Williams. I'm from Blackstone and I'm on the school committee.
Matt Aaronworth, Assistant Superintendent.
Tara Larkin, School Committee, Millville.
Ron Polillo, DRA Architects.
I'm Greg Smalley with DRA Architects.
Mary Bolso, Selectman Blackstone.
Scott Hebert, Director of Facilities.
Jason DeFalco, Superintendent.
All right, thank you. And we have minutes to approve from, is that right, June 29th was our last meeting? Did everyone have a chance to review them?
Well, were there minutes from the joint meeting?
No,
The joint meeting, that's a good question.
So it's just this one then?
there were individual boards minutes that they would have taken. The capital subcommittee meeting didn't convene.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a quorum prior to the joint.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, good. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes from 6:29?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from 6:29.
Motion by Tara,
Second.
second by Carrie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. And then, do we have an update from the facilities working group?
So I can say the only update I have, I know Matt and I, as we said, we're still looking into transitioning some of the low-hanging fruit, like the lights to LED. And one of the things that we actually did, we caught it in kind of at the end of the fiscal year from a budgetary perspective, was we did just change over the parking lot lights at the high school. So that should be hopefully a nice energy saving for the district. And it should brighten things up. And now when the band is practicing through Lord only knows what hours, they will be able to see.
Very good.
That would be the end of my report, though.
Well, thank you. Next, we have, I'm going to hand it over to Greg and Ron, right? For configuration and building plan options.
Okay. Well, welcome, everyone. I handed out a kind of a agenda, talking points. We can go at it from there. I had brought Ron with the to backstop in case we got enough people to split up into groups and work in breakout sessions. We're just about at that threshold, so we can work as a single group of people, but your call if we want to split up. What we want to start doing, what we need to start doing in order to get and stay on schedule, is to actually go from the ethereal and the kind of thinking out loud that we've been doing and start to bring it down and put it inside the buildings and figure out how these buildings might work, whether what we own already works or will work differently, and what we may need to do to it in order to get it to work. So what we've talked quite a bit about curriculum, and I think it's pretty inarguable that we're very much looking forward curriculum-wise. We're not as a district sitting still at all and doing some pretty creative stuff on the curriculum side. So that drives some of what we're going to need in the buildings in order to be able to perpetuate that without building ourselves into a corner. And so what we never want to do is design a building for an ideology, a person, or a particular program that's going on. We want to build a building that can adjust, be flexible, be agile enough to be still relevant 10, 15, 20 years out. When we're just about finished with the bond, we want the building to still be relevant to what we're teaching. So we've talked a couple of times about the needs of the existing buildings. That's what started us here, was the assessment report, and that is pretty dense in defining the needs, and it's pretty much telling us that there isn't a building we own that doesn't need work. Some need more work than others, and some might be a struggle to make relevant again without a rather large investment. We also talked about, most recently, the idea of some of the grade alignments and how might that start to work. And with that, we talked about potentially what you have now with a early elementary, middle, and high, keeping the elementary schools the way they were, and perhaps going to a middle high school arrangement, which gives us some flexibility, larger student cohort, perhaps an increase in the viability of a career path approach, and also the capability of an extracurricular agenda of programs, sports, post-school type of things could be a little bit broader because of the increased student size. We also talked a little bit about combining and just running an elementary school and a middle high school. So 2 buildings, slightly larger, and what we never really got around to on that was the comfort level of an elementary school of that size, a grade configuration of that size, which is something that we should talk about as we get further along, because at some point, elementary schools get to be a little bit unwieldy, and we've all seen real big elementary schools. So the idea is, how do you take that, if that is the option and we go that way, and we're talking more than 500 kids, how do you make the school feel like a number of smaller schools? How do you get that down so that a child has an identity within the school without having to understand and comprehend the entire building? That's kind of our challenge with the elementary school kids. They know 1 or 2 rooms when they start. They know 3 or 4 when they get up to about 3rd or 4th grade. They know almost the entire school by 5th grade. And then they're into a bigger world. So designing an elementary school for the larger population is something we need to talk about as we get further down. So what we're trying to do from that is then start to move this into the physical world. And I did this as 4 breakout sessions with the idea that we'd spend about 15 minutes just not quite blue sky, but not at 30,000 feet. Let's come down into like the 10,000 foot level. And the physical needs of each one of those grade alignments. Like, what do we think as people who are familiar with the district and familiar with kids and familiar with the outside world as well? What do we think each one of those potential 3 grade alignments might need in terms of physical needs? So learning areas, group areas, common areas, outdoor areas. And these are just baby steps. A lot of times you do this, you would take all 4 of these items and do it as a 1-hour breakout session and everyone get bored and want pizza. If we do this as 4 little 15-minute steps, we'll be done sooner and it will feel more dynamic as we go through it because each one will build on the other. So I'll leave it up to you if you want to split in half, and typically I would split the administrators so you end up with separate groups. We set up charts over there. We have markers as long as you promise to write only on the paper. And if you just take that and talk out loud and say, okay, this is what we think we need, you can't be right or wrong. The only way you can be wrong is if you didn't come back with anything. And if we did it in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it takes, if you're done and you say we're not, we're out of ideas, then we'll just come back and we'll report back out. We'll find the commonalities. We'll talk about anything that seems different from one to the other. And then we'll go out and we'll do the breakout session 2. If you prefer to do it as one, then we'll just pull one of the charts over here and we'll just start talking. It's up to you guys.
I say we divide up.
I think we could divide up
Okay.
early enough. And there are going to be a couple of others joining as well, so. we'll have
Okay.
additional.
Well, there's one chart there, one on the other side, and Ron and I will just mill about and try to,
So that's 4, Matt?
Yeah, do we
And
want
then
to
you
just
4?
split the table here?
That work?
yeah.
And we're both doing session 1?
Yep, do
Okay.
session 1, and then we'll try for 15 minutes. If it gets to the point where you've run out of ideas, then we'll just come back and talk.